In our headlines on this Friday, March 13th, here in South Korea, a U.S. refueling aircraft involved in the U.S. military mission against Iran goes down in western Iraq on Thursday, as Iran's new leader shares his first public statement, vowing revenge for the loss of Iranian lives in the latest conflict by ramping up attacks in the Gulf region and in the Strait of Hormuz. Meanwhile, South Korea puts in place a temporary price cap on domestic fuel starting today, as global oil prices surged to over $100 a barrel following the renewed pledge for revenge by Iran. Also, on the local front, the Blue House will play host to the leaders of Indonesia and France come April in separate summits aimed at advancing South Korea's pragmatic diplomacy as it seeks to better navigate the current climate of geopolitical turbulence. We start over in the Middle East, where an American refueling aircraft crashed in western Iraq, while in northern Iraq, a French soldier was killed in a drone attack. Our Chung Hae-rim has our top story.
A KC-135 U.S. military aerial refueling aircraft has crashed in western Iraq as part of operations connected to the ongoing war with Iran. U.S. Central Command confirmed the incident on Thursday, saying rescue efforts are underway, though the condition of the crew remains unclear. Officials said the crash was, quote, not due to hostile or enemy fire, and investigations into the cause are ongoing. Additionally, casualties caused by the conflict are rising across the region. French President Emmanuel Macron confirmed that a French soldier was killed in northern Iraq in the Erbil region and added that several others were wounded in an attack that was, quote, unacceptable. The U.S. military evacuated 19 injured service members to a military hospital in Germany, including troops wounded by a drone explosion. Meanwhile, tensions across the region continue to rise. Iran has vowed to continue its response. New Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei said during his first public message since taking power that Tehran will keep targeting U.S. allies in the region and maintain pressure on global shipping routes in the Persian Gulf, closing oil routes in the Strait of Hormuz. Despite the economic turmoil, U.S. President Trump spoke positively about the situation during a press conference celebrating Women's History Month at the White House.
The situation with Iran is moving along very rapidly. It's doing very well. Our military is unsurpassed.
However, Iranian Security Chief Ali Larijani issued a stark warning in response, stating that starting a war is easy, but it, quote, cannot be won with a few tweets, promising to make the U.S., quote, sorry. Chung Hae-rim, Arirang News.
And Iran's latest threats also sent global oil prices over $100 a barrel, prompting the U.S. to ease sanctions on Russian oil. Our Kim Do-yeon explains.
Global oil prices have surged past the $100 mark following Iran's declaration to continue blockading the Strait of Hormuz, prompting the United States to temporarily ease sanctions on Russian oil. May futures for Brent Crude jumped 9.2% on Thursday to close at $100.46 a barrel. This marks the first time Brent has closed above the $100 threshold since August 2022. April futures for West Texas Intermediate also spiked 9.7%, settling at $95.73. The surge follows Iran's new Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei's first official televised address. He ordered the continued use of Hormuz blockade as leverage against the United States and Israel, signaling an aggressive shift in military posture. Tensions have escalated as Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps attacked multiple vessels for allegedly ignoring warnings. At least 16 ships have been targeted in the region since the situation began. The International Energy Agency officially confirmed that the ongoing Middle East situation is causing the largest supply disruption in oil market history. In a drastic measure to counter skyrocketing prices, the U.S. government announced Thursday it will temporarily permit the sale of some sanctioned Russian crude and petroleum products. The Treasury Department's Office of Foreign Assets Control issued a general license approving sales until April 11th for Russian oil loaded onto ships before 12:01 a.m. that day. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent stated on social media that the temporary authorization allows countries to purchase Russian oil currently stranded at sea to expand the existing global supply. He noted the short-term measure applies only to oil already in transit and will not provide meaningful financial benefit to the Russian government. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Here in South Korea, the government has put in place a price cap on fuel to ease the burden on consumers. Our Park Chun-han has the latest.
The national average gasoline price at gas stations as of Friday at 10 a.m. hit 1,883.79 Korean won, or roughly $1.26. This is around 15 won lower than the previous day and marks the third consecutive day of decline, even as global oil prices hit $100 per barrel and continue their upward trend. This comes as the South Korean government has implemented a temporary price cap on domestic fuel. Beginning midnight on Friday, it is the first such measure in nearly 30 years since the full liberalization of oil prices in 1997. It usually takes 2 to 3 weeks for fluctuations in international oil prices to be reflected at domestic gas stations.
The government will take firm action against excessive price hikes that exploit the crisis and will implement a price cap on petroleum products to ease the burden on consumers.
This step comes in response to supply concerns and sharp oil price surges triggered by the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz and ongoing tensions in the Middle East. The system sets upper limits on the wholesale supply prices that refineries can charge to gas stations and distributors. Regular gasoline is capped at 1,724 won per liter, automotive diesel at 1,713 won per liter, and household kerosene at 1,321 per liter. The maximum prices are calculated based on refiners' pre-Middle East conflict supply prices, adjusted by international oil price fluctuation rates and added taxes. The government will review and reset these maximum prices every 2 weeks, taking into account developments in the Middle East and global oil trends. Retail prices at individual gas stations are not directly subject to the cap due to regional variations and enforcement challenges. However, the government has strengthened monitoring alongside a ban on hoarding and profiteering. Gas stations that charge unusually high markups compared to their supply prices will be publicly named. If they're caught doing it again, they will face a full investigation by multiple agencies for possible collusion, poor fuel quality, or stockpiling. The government is also preparing additional measures such as potential fuel tax cuts and targeted subsidies for vulnerable groups if the situation worsens. Park Jun-han, Arirang News.
In other news, Prime Minister Kim Min-seok sat down with U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance in Washington, D.C. on Thursday after the parliament here passed a special bill paving the path for South Korea's planned $350 billion investment in the U.S. According to the Prime Minister's office here in Seoul, Vance welcomed the latest legislation. The South Korean Prime Minister, for his part, urged the execution of key security agreements in the joint fact sheet, including the construction of nuclear-powered submarines and related uranium enrichment. The U.S. has imposed sanctions on 6 individuals and 2 institutions linked to North Korea's attempts to place IT workers in U.S. companies. According to the U.S. Treasury Department's Office of Foreign Assets Control on Thursday local time, those newly sanctioned had been using stolen identities and forged documents to secure employment in companies in the U.S. and allied countries. The Treasury Department says such schemes earned North Korea an estimated $800 million in 2024 alone to help fund its hostile weapons ambitions. And a passenger train from North Korea to China arrived in Beijing on this Friday to mark the first such arrival in 6 years. Our foreign affairs correspondent Oh Soo-young has more.
The first train departing from Pyongyang arrived at Beijing railway station Friday morning, right on schedule. It had left the North Korean capital at 10:26 a.m. the previous day, pulling in at the platform in Beijing at 8:40 a.m. after a near 25-hour journey. Electronic display boards at Beijing Station began announcing the arrival about an hour in advance, identifying the service as train K28 from Pyongyang, set to arrive on platform 10. The railway link was suspended in January 2020 when North Korea sealed its borders to prevent the spread of COVID-19. The route is jointly operated by Chinese and North Korean railways and runs through Tianjin, Sanhaiguan, Shenyang and the border city of Tandong before crossing into North Korea through Siniju. China Railway says the service will operate Monday, Wednesday, Thursday and Saturday in both directions, restoring a long-standing symbol of cross-border exchange between the two countries.
Since the COVID-19 pandemic, people-to-people exchanges between North Korea and China have in fact been extremely limited. With the service resuming after 6 years, exchanges will first begin mainly in the commercial sector, not tourism, but business-focused travel involving people engaged in commercial activities. Gradually, there is also a strong possibility that ordinary tourist exchanges will resume as well.
In any case, this resumption of train operations, the expert says, could become an important turning point for revitalizing bilateral ties.
In particular, one of the key points agreed upon at last year's North Korea-China summit included language stating that both leaders would work to improve the welfare of their respective peoples. Improving welfare between the two ultimately begins with people-to-people exchanges, through which mutual benefits and shared gains can be realized.
For now, however, travel remains tightly restricted, with early tickets reportedly limited mainly to passengers holding business visas. Since last year, North Korea has begun cautiously reopening its borders, restoring some international flights and rail links with Russia in the summer. Oh Seong, Arirang News.
Come early April, President Lee Jae-myung will play host to his counterparts from Indonesia and from France in separate summits aimed at advancing South Korea's pragmatic diplomacy as it seeks to better navigate the current climate of geopolitical turbulence. Our Blue House correspondent Song Yoo-jin reports.
President Lee Jae-myung is set for more high-level diplomacy next month, with the leaders of France and Indonesia scheduled to make state visits to South Korea. According to the Blue House on Friday, French President Emmanuel Macron will pay his first-ever visit to South Korea from April 2nd to 3rd. The trip will mark the first by a French president in 11 years. The summit between Lee and Macron will take place on April 3rd. Blue House spokesperson Kang Yoo-jung says they will discuss expanding cooperation in trade, advanced technologies, culture, as well as regional and global issues. Attention is also on whether the two sides will elevate bilateral ties to a strategic partnership, an idea first raised when the two leaders met on the sidelines of the G20 summit last November.
그리고 프랑스와 대한민국의 관계도 전략적 동반자 관계로 한 단계 더 격상하고 문화 분야든 경제 분야든 안보 분야든 첨단 기술이든 이런 각 분야에서 협력을 좀 더 확고하게 했으면 좋겠습니다.
I will schedule a visit to your country for 2026 and as well to celebrate this birthday of our diplomatic relation, but as well to see on the different topics from defense and security to artificial intelligence and quantum, space, renewable energies and nuclear.
South Korea and France mark 140 years of diplomatic relations this year. Ahead of that meeting, President Lee will hold summit talks with Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto on April 1st. The two last met during the APEC leaders meeting in Gyeongju. The summit is expected to focus on strengthening Seoul and Jakarta's special strategic partnership. Particular attention is on defense cooperation, as Indonesia is one of South Korea's major arms export partners. The two countries are also collaborating on the KF-21 보라매 project, a joint defense initiative to develop the KF-21 advanced fighter jet.
군사안보 분야에서 전투기 공동 개발 같은 아주 깊이 있는 협력 관계가 맺어졌는데 더 큰 결과로 되돌아오게 될 수 있도록 계속적인 협력 관계를 이어나가면 좋겠습니다.
I think we will continue to discuss the follow-up of the KF-21 projects. So I think negotiations are continuing.
These back-to-back summits show Seoul's push to strengthen ties with key partners in Europe and Southeast Asia as countries around the world navigate an increasingly uncertain global landscape. 송유진, Arirang News.
And President Jae-myung has proposed merging the provinces of Chungcheong-bukdo and Chungcheong-namdo with the city of Daejeon into a single metropolitan region. Speaking at a town hall meeting with residents in Chungcheong-bukdo province on this Friday, he said such integration could help strengthen the area's economic and administrative power. His remarks come as a special bill to integrate Daejeon and Chungcheong-namdo province failed to pass the parliament following local opposition and political division. Ruling lawmakers say integration will facilitate regional development, while opposition lawmakers claim the move is politically motivated ahead of the June local elections. Samsung Electronics has resumed construction at its Pyeongtaek plant amid soaring global demand for AI chips, triggering a positive chain reaction that is also breathing new life into the regional economy. Our Kim Jun-hong was there.
Construction workers in safety helmets and fluorescent vests walk in line. Some grab a quick bite to eat, while others stretch and warm up in the dark. They are working to expand Samsung Electronics' Pyeongtaek campus, already the world's largest single-site semiconductor production complex. It's still before 6 in the morning. The sun isn't even up yet, but just out of Seoul here in Pyeongtaek, the day is already off to a busy start, with more than 20,000 workers pouring in every day. Construction here is in overdrive as Samsung looks to take advantage of the surging demand for chips.
The number of workers seems to have nearly tripled. Over the past few months, restaurants have been so crowded that it's hard to find a seat. That's when I really notice the surge in workers.
With the construction industry in a prolonged slump, this site has become a welcome source of jobs, drawing workers from across the country.
Since jobs are scarce elsewhere, many workers are coming here instead. I see people in shipyard vests and even rain gear from heavy industry sites.
The surge is also breathing life into nearby businesses. As lunchtime approaches, workers line up to board large shuttle buses. Run by nearby restaurants, the buses fill up quickly.
If things keep going like this, we may need to add more buses. There were times when not even a third of the seats were filled, but now all 240 seats are full. It's hectic, but we're glad.
For now, the semiconductor boom lighting up Pyeongtaek shows little sign of slowing down, with Korean firms leading the global memory market, ramping up production to meet surging demand.
As AI continues to expand, demand for semiconductors is expected to keep rising. South Korea has strong competitiveness in memory chips, along with the talent and infrastructure to support domestic production. New plants can also bring benefits to nearby businesses and local economies.
Amid the semiconductor supercycle, Korea's chip expansion appears to be only just beginning. Kim Jun-hong, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, on the big screen, a historical drama film is drawing crowds back to local theatres, and many in the movie industry are hoping this trend is here to stay. Our culture correspondent Park Geon-woo files this report.
For the first time in around 2 years, South Korea has produced a 10 million movie, a mega hit of more than 10 million viewers, even amid a prolonged slowdown in the domestic film industry. The King's Warden, a historical drama about a village chief who offers his village as a place of exile for a young king forced from the throne, has drawn more than 12 million moviegoers as of March 11th. That means more than 1 in 5 people in Korea has already seen the film in theaters. It's now the 25th Korean movie to pass the 10 million milestone, surpassing major hits from 2 years ago, Exuma and The Roundup Punishment, which each drew over 11 million. The film's producer says a lot of effort went into developing the characters and the story.
We wanted to show a different perspective on King Daejeon, the possibility that he could have been a ruler with a strong sense of justice. We also built the story through the village chief's perspective, and viewers seem to have connected with both.
Many viewers say the story left a deep emotional impact.
Even knowing the history about King Daejeon, it made me feel quite emotional. The story seems simple, but it really stirs your emotions.
Since the king is killed by someone who took the throne through rebellion, it must have been humiliating. Watching his beliefs collapse made me feel the same sense of helplessness.
One critic says the film's success is even more meaningful at a time when theaters are struggling against the rise of streaming platforms.
The film opened as people were slowly returning to theaters. Historical films also tend to do well during long Korean holidays. With little strong competition and strong word of mouth, the movie quickly gained momentum and became a major talking point, regardless of people thinking about when the film will be released on streaming platforms.
The same critic added that the momentum accelerated after the film reached 7 to 8 million viewers, and it could potentially draw as many as 15 million. The critic also said the film's success could become a benchmark for future productions and bring new vitality to Korea's struggling film industry. Park Gon-woo, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Thursday said that Israel and the United States are successfully crushing the Iranian regime and its proxies. In his first press conference since the war began, Netanyahu said that the joint campaign has changed the balance of power in the Middle East by striking what he called Iran's industries of death. He also said Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, was a, quote, puppet of the Revolutionary Guards who is too afraid to show his face in public. Netanyahu emphasized that the military's primary objective remains preventing Tehran from developing nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles, but said it is also creating, quote, optimum conditions for Iranians to topple the government. In the U.S., armed security personnel in Michigan shot and killed a suspect after he rammed a truck into a Detroit area synagogue on Thursday. The suspect crashed the truck through the doors of Temple, Israel, while 140 children were inside the building's daycare center. Law enforcement discovered a large cache of explosives inside the suspect's vehicle. One security officer sustained injuries, but all children and other staff escaped unharmed. The FBI are treating the incident as a targeted act of violence against the Jewish community. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum's attempted electoral reforms have failed to get through Congress. The Mexican leader on Thursday said she will continue her push to reduce political privileges and will release details of a Plan B on Monday. This follows the rejection by the Chamber of Deputies on Wednesday of a constitutional amendment that would have eliminated proportional representation and cut election spending by 25%. Opponents argued Sheinbaum's reforms would have weakened smaller parties and granted the governing Morena party excessive power. Humanity's first trip around the moon in more than 50 years looks to be back on after NASA cleared its moon rocket for an April 1st launch attempt. Engineers at the Kennedy Space Center fixed a helium flow issue that had previously grounded the 322-foot rocket and delayed the mission. NASA officials on Thursday confirmed the rocket will roll back to the launch pad next week to meet a narrow 6-day launch window. The agency declared both the hardware and the 4-member crew are ready for the historic mission to the moon. Ju Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
We had some pleasant early spring weather in the capital area with a fresh easterly breeze helping clear the air. I mean, it was chilly and windy, but fine overall. And it snowed quite a bit in mountainous regions in Chungcheong-do Province, with a heavy snow advisory being issued at times. And it looks like we are going to have a similar weather pattern through the weekend, with wide gaps in readings with more cloud coverage. Tomorrow morning, we are beginning the day at 3 degrees Celsius here in the capital, but Daejeon, Daegu still very cold at just 0 degrees. But both regions will see highs jumping to the mid-teens by the afternoon, topping out at 14 degrees in Daejeon, 15 over in Daegu. And next week, temperatures are expected to stay close to seasonal norms, bringing typical mid-March spring weather with more precipitation in the forecast on Wednesday. With that in mind, here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Those are the headlines at this hour in South Korea. Coming up next is our daily panel session, and today we touch upon a host of entertaining as well as enlightening stories here that made international headlines. Do stay with us. Thank you for now.